about this issue from a slightly different perspective, which is that of government, and more specifically about the role of government in economic development and the creation of jobs in the second machine age. Let me start by just providing a very short overview about the experience we've gone through over the past 50 years. Singapore is celebrating 50 years of independence this year. Almost a miracle because our founding fathers did not think we could survive. We were kicked out of Malaysia, without which we had no domestic market of relevance, a population of only about 2 million people then. Pretty much a piece of granite with no natural resources at all. Land area of about 600 square kilometers, so not much that we could do there. And soon after independence in 1965, the British forces withdrew, so unemployment numbers surged, and it was a major issue of the day. We did have one thing going for us, which was that our port was strategically located in the sea routes between Europe and the Far East, and a natural deep water harbor. But we needed a second growth engine that could create lots of jobs, and manufacturing offered that. So the conventional approach then was to attract manufacturing through import substitution. But with no market of note, that could not work for Singapore. So we went against the instinct of many newly independent countries at that time by going out aggressively to attract multinational companies to manufacture in Singapore. In short, we had to borrow their markets. Our value proposition in the early years was the availability of hardworking, low-cost labor, but soon we enjoyed full employment, resulting in rising wages, and so we invested aggressively in skills training and education. And starting in the 1980s, we also started to successfully attract capital-intensive industries because by then, Singapore had gained a reputation as a stable, pro-business environment with a strong rule of law. The growth of markets in ASEAN and Asia, more recently, over the past 2 decades or so, internationally tradable services or knowledge jobs have grown in importance. Jobs in finance, law, accountancy, headquarter functions, etc. So I provided this overview to just provide the observation that from the early days, our workforce had to adapt to a faster pace of change than many other countries. And they have been able to cope well. An important factor was the social compact in Singapore. The government essentially placed priority on economic growth and job creation. Our social policy was our economic policy. This includes education and training to help Singaporeans access all these opportunities that we were bringing in through attracting MNCs. And we succeeded. Singapore and Singaporeans moved from third world to first world in 1 generation. But a key aspect of this social compact was individual responsibility and self-reliance, reinforced by a system based on meritocracy. Example was the way we designed our social security system. In essence, this is a national savings plan, where employees contributed a certain amount of their salaries into their personal fund, we call it CPF, Central Provident Fund, with employers adding an additional percentage. And this fund basically helped workers pay for mortgages, healthcare, and of course retirement. CPF enabled Singapore to also avoid labor market rigidities where there's an over-reliance on employers to provide pension plans, healthcare insurance, and other key benefits. It certainly promoted and enabled workers to move in order to find a better fit between their skills and the opportunities that were available in the labor marketplace. So this individual responsibility and self-reliance, I think, has been a key part of the social compact in Singapore that has enabled us to be where we are today. And I certainly do not believe that Singapore can be a model for other countries because the context in which we're operating in is unique. We've always been reminded that no one owes us a living. As I alluded to earlier, we have no natural resources to offer to anybody, and the only thing that can create a living for ourselves will be through sheer hard work. And this has been drummed in over and over again. So if no one owes the country a living, the state certainly would not have the resources to provide for the individuals and take over the role of the individual. So individual responsibility and self-reliance has been and hopefully will remain a key tenet of governance in Singapore. But where do we go from here? As an economy, I think Singapore is well placed to harness the opportunities arising from the growth of Asia, not just China, India, but also the Southeast Asian countries. Rapid urbanization, consumption from the middle class, movement of goods, people, and ideas, all these are macro trends that Singapore will seek to capitalize on and make a living from. But critically, what will the jobs look like? Technological advances, as you have heard all morning, will be very disruptive. The one that's confronting us now is no longer automation of manufacturing jobs. There will continue to be some, the use of robotics, the use of wearables, as Gil mentioned earlier, Daryl mentioned earlier. But the one that's confronting us right now, and I think will hit us hard in the next 5 to 10 years, is automation of knowledge work. Because of machine learning, because of AI, better human interfaces. Globally, 250 million people are involved in knowledge work. This is worth about $9 trillion in employment costs, or 27% of the global total. Good-paying jobs, middle-class jobs, all at risk. So robotics will not just replace repetitive tasks, difficult or dangerous tasks, but also delicate and intricate tasks. They will be adaptive. Service delivery, healthcare, personal household services can be now taken on by robotics and taken on by advent of artificial intelligence. So many jobs will disappear. So even as new ones emerge, so those who create and maintain all these technologies will do well, but will there be sufficient jobs? For Singapore, and this is something John mentioned earlier, which is similar in Europe, slightly less of a problem because of declining fertility. We depend on an inflow of immigrants to balance supply and demand in the labor market. So less of a problem in terms of sheer absolute number of jobs. But how are you going to train the existing workforce? How are you going to prepare new entrants into the workforce to be ready for the new environment out there? Because when you do not know what sort of jobs will be there, how do you invest in education and training? What skills to emphasize? I trained in medicine in the late 80s, and even then, by the time I reached my final year, the knowledge that I was acquiring in year 1, year 2 was obsolete because of the advent of genetics. So what more today? You will graduate with knowledge that's obsolete and because of the sheer pace of change. What if you are already in the workforce? It's one thing about directing an 18-year-old to training and gaining the right type of skills, but what about a 45-year-old with a mortgage to pay and a family to feed? And not just once, twice, 3 times, because that's how careers will change thanks to technology. So that's just one issue that's creating a stress in the social compact. The second big one, of course, is income distribution. Already it is a problem. Globalization means more opportunities than ever for owners of capital versus labor. Capital share of total income has been gaining at the expense of labor. But going forward, income inequality will be exacerbated even within the ranks of the people who toil for their living. More will go to those who are part of the technological changes, but what about those who can't cope? So it is not surprising at all that in Singapore today, we are adjusting the social compact. If the government fails to deliver the jobs part of the equation, if our GDP does not grow, obviously there will be a lot of social unrest. So 2 things that we've started on, and I'll share this and then end with these ideas. First is Skills Future. This is the government's effort to essentially create a new paradigm for education and training. And there are 2 core ideas in there. First is a much greater emphasis on continuous education and training, as opposed to pre-employment training. By pre-employment training, we mean K-12, tertiary education in the university, polytechnics, and so on. And we are shifting more and more resources to training after you've already entered the workforce, because again, as I make reference again to John's earlier talk, we need to help workers who are already out there to continue to adjust to the new types of jobs that will be available, even as their jobs become obsolete. So that's one idea, a greater emphasis on continuous employment training. The second idea is that we have to prepare the society to multiple paths of success. I think the traditional idea that you move from, you advance or you progress from blue-collar work to white-collar work to knowledge work and innovative and creative work, I think all that will become moot in the new world where in the second machine age. Because new jobs will actually be created in the delivery of personal services. If we believe in the utopia whereby we will have more leisure time and so on, provided income distribution can flow to those, to everybody, there will be an opportunity for greater demand for the delivery of personal services. Skills, craftsmanship, customized services, I think this will be where jobs will be created. So society needs to be used to the idea that there will be multiple paths of success. We need to have porosity and flexibility of the workforce. Because, and another reason why from a government's perspective we need to promote that, because we simply cannot predict anymore as to what are the skills that will be in demand in the future. But having said all this, how do we preserve the culture of self-reliance? In every society there will be those that will need help, a leg up. We cannot leave everyone entirely to the market forces. But income inequality means that the state now needs to do more. And so in Singapore, we have essentially adopted this idea that help has to go to those who will help themselves. And this second initiative, I talked earlier about Skills Future. The second one, which I'd like to share here, is the idea of workfare. So this is not unemployment benefits. This is really an income top-up for those who are prepared to take on jobs even if they are not paying enough today. It's simple. Again, it's to promote individual responsibility, it's to promote self-reliance, and to a large extent, dignity for the individual. That if you hold a job, even if it doesn't pay enough, it's better to hold a job than to be unemployed. But to make it worth your while to hold that job, the government will provide an income top-up. So this is one of the shifts that we are making in our social compact between the government and the citizens. It's a paradox of sorts, of course, because the government is in fact intervening to promote self-reliance. So I'll end here. I thought I'll just leave you with these two ideas about how today in Singapore we are adjusting to address the challenges that will come with the second machine age, Skills Future, and this idea called workfare. Thank you.